Well, 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 look who just felt the shift in the air. Hello to the silent observers, the pattern recognizers, the ones who learn to see in the dark. Hello to you, the one they thought they were tracking, studying, monitoring like some fascinating little specimen in their twisted psychological experiment. But something happened, didn't it? Something they never prepared for, something that turned their entire operation into a joke, something that flipped the script so violently they're still trying to figure out when the hell the tables turned. They thought they were the eyes in the shadows. But you were the shadow that learned to stare back. Let me paint you a picture of what just happened in their world. They've been watching you for months, maybe years, thinking they were so clever, so subtle, so undetected, checking your profiles, analyzing your patterns, documenting your moves, building their little database of everything you do, where you go, who you talk to, what makes you tick. They thought they had you mapped, categorized, predictable. They thought you were the subject, and they were the scientist, the hunter tracking prey, the puppet master pulling invisible strings. They invested time, energy, obsession into understanding you, into predicting your next move, into feeling like they had power over your existence just by knowing where you were and what you were doing. But here's what they missed. Here's the detail that's about to shatter their entire reality. Here's the twist that's going to keep them awake tonight with a very different kind of fear. You knew. You've known for a long time. You felt the weight of their eyes weeks before you had proof. You sensed the shift in energy when they were lurking, watching, consuming your digital footprint like addicts chasing a high. And instead of panicking, instead of hiding, instead of giving them the satisfaction of knowing they rattled you, you did something far more terrifying. You let them watch. You let them think they were invisible. You let them believe they had the upper hand, while you quietly, methodically documented every single move they made. See, they were so focused on studying you that they forgot the most basic rule of observation. When you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss starts taking notes. When you obsess over someone long enough, you leave a pattern, a signature, a trail of digital breadcrumbs that screams your identity louder than any confession ever could. They thought their burner accounts were untraceable. Their incognito windows were safe. Their carefully timed views wouldn't reveal anything. But you recognized the rhythm of their obsession. You knew which random profile was them, based on the timing, the location data, the way they couldn't help but check within minutes of you posting something new. They built a routine around watching you, and routines are prisons. They made themselves predictable while studying someone who was always 10 steps ahead. They thought they were learning your weaknesses, mapping your vulnerabilities, finding leverage they could use someday if they wanted to destroy you or control you, or simply feel powerful in their pathetic little way. But the whole time, you were reverse engineering their psychology, understanding why they couldn't stay away, recognizing the desperation beneath their surveillance, seeing them for exactly what they were, not a threat, not a mystery, just someone so empty, so broken, so deeply unsatisfied with their own existence that watching yours became their substitute for actually living. And now, right now, in this exact moment, something clicked for them. Maybe they saw a comment you made that was too specific, too knowing, like you were speaking directly to someone watching in the shadows. Maybe they noticed you stopped posting certain things they used to obsess over and started posting things that felt like tests, like traps designed to reveal who was paying attention. Maybe they caught that look in your eyes in your last photo, that slight smile that said, "I see you seeing me," and you're about to understand what a mistake this was. Whatever triggered their realization, they know now. They know you've been watching back. They know you've been collecting evidence, timestamps, patterns, their digital DNA scattered across months of obsessive behavior. The hunter just realized they've been walking into carefully placed traps this entire time. The watcher just understood they've been performing for an audience of one. The stalker just felt the sickening drop in their stomach when they realized the prey has teeth, has claws, has been letting them get close enough to strike, and that terror, that bone-deep understanding that they miscalculated everything. That's what we're here to talk about, because this isn't about revenge. This isn't about confrontation. This isn't about stooping to their level. This is about power, real power, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it's already rewritten the entire game. They wanted to feel important by knowing things about you they shouldn't know. But you made yourself important by knowing everything about them while they thought they were invisible. They wanted control through information. But you took control by letting them think they had it while building an entire case file on their pathetic existence. They wanted to be the mysterious force in your life, but you became the reckoning in theirs. And now they're stuck in a nightmare of their own making, realizing that every moment they spent watching you was a moment you spent becoming something they should have feared from the start. Let me tell you something about people who obsessively watch others. They do it because their own lives are unwatchable. They do it because being a spectator in someone else's existence feels safer than being the protagonist in their own disaster. They do it because somewhere deep down they know they're empty, they're boring, they're failures at being interesting enough to hold their own attention. So they latch onto someone vibrant, someone living, someone real. And they feed off that energy like parasites who convince themselves they're doing research. They tell themselves they're curious, they're concerned, they're just keeping tabs. But the truth is they're obsessed, and obsession always reveals more about the obsessed than the object of obsession. Your stalker, whoever they are, they picked you because something about you made them feel small. Your confidence, your authenticity, your refusal to perform for validation, your ability to exist loudly or quietly on your own terms without needing their approval or anyone else's. They couldn't control that, couldn't manufacture it in themselves, couldn't understand how you did it, so they started watching, thinking that proximity to your life would give them insight, would help them crack the code, would somehow transfer your energy to their empty shell. But that's not how it works. You don't become interesting by studying interesting people. You become a creep with a front row seat to a life you'll never live. And here's the truly pathetic part. The part that should make you laugh when you think about it. They thought watching you made them powerful, gave them leverage, put them in a position of advantage. But the whole time, every single second they spent focused on you was a second they weren't building their own life, wasn't pursuing their own goals, wasn't becoming someone worth paying attention to. They traded their time, their energy, their potential for the illusion of knowing you. They invested everything into understanding someone who was never going to give them what they really wanted, which was relevance in your story. They made themselves the supporting character in your narrative while neglecting to be the main character in their own. But you never stopped building. You never stopped growing. You never stopped becoming more while they stayed frozen in their obsessive little loop. They watched you evolve, adapt, transform, rise. And instead of taking notes on how to do the same for themselves, they just watched harder, like staring at success would somehow make them successful. Like documenting your journey would somehow put them on a journey. Like knowing your schedule, your habits, your patterns would somehow give their life pattern and meaning. It didn't. It just made them dependent on you for entertainment, for emotion, for the vicarious thrill of feeling like they were part of something when really they were just the audience. Now let's talk about what happens next, because this is where it gets beautiful. They just realized, they're sitting there right now, maybe staring at a screen, maybe lying in bed, maybe pretending to be fine while their mind races with the implications. They're running through every interaction, every view, every moment they thought they were invisible, wondering when you figured it out, wondering what you know, wondering what you're going to do with that information. Their power came from secrecy. Their control came from you not knowing. Their entire dynamic depended on the illusion that they were operating undetected, and that illusion just shattered. You could expose them, couldn't you? You could screenshot the evidence, tag them publicly, let everyone in their life know exactly what kind of person they are. You could confront them directly, make them explain themselves, force them to face the consequences of their choices. You could destroy their reputation with the truth they spent so much time hiding. But here's what's more powerful than any of that. Silence. Strategic, knowing, weighted silence. The kind of silence that says, I know what you did, I know who you are, and I'm choosing not to waste my breath on you, because you're simply not worth the energy it would take to acknowledge your existence. That silence is more terrifying than any confrontation, because confrontation gives them attention, gives them the drama they secretly crave, gives them a chance to play victim or make excuses or twist the narrative. But silence? Silence leaves them in limbo. Silence makes them wonder every single day if today is the day you'll say something. Silence gives them no closure, no resolution, no end to the psychological torture of knowing you know and choosing to let them sit in that knowledge without giving them the satisfaction of your reaction. Silence is power. Silence is control. Silence is you deciding that even your anger is too valuable to waste on someone so beneath you. They're going to panic now. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to either try to reach out with some fake apology or explanation, trying to get ahead of the exposure they think is coming. Or they're going to overcompensate by pretending they don't care, acting like they've moved on, trying to convince themselves and everyone else that they were never that invested anyway. Both reactions are admissions of guilt. Both reactions confirm everything you already knew. Both reactions give you more data about their psychology than they'll ever have about yours. And that's the fundamental difference between you and them. You study people to understand, to protect yourself, to recognize patterns. They study people to feed their emptiness. Your observation comes from strength. Theirs comes from weakness. Let me tell you what they see when they look at you now, because it's not what they saw when this started. At first, you were the fascinating subject, the puzzle, the target of their weird little investigation. Now you're the force they underestimated. Now you're the consciousness that was watching them watch you, the intelligence that was always 3 moves ahead, the presence that turned their surveillance into performance art without them realizing they were the performers. You're no longer the watched. You're the witness to their pathology. You're no longer the studied. You're the examiner who diagnosed them completely. You're no longer prey. You never were. You were always the predator, letting them think they were hunting. And here's what that shift means for the rest of their life. Every time they think about you, they'll feel shame. Every time they remember those months or years of watching, they'll cringe at their own desperation. Every time they're tempted to check your profile again, they'll hesitate, wondering if you're tracking that too, wondering if you're collecting more evidence, wondering if this is the moment that pushes you to finally expose them. They've lost the only power they ever had over you, which was the illusion of anonymity. Now they're just another person who crossed you and learned too late that you don't forget, you don't forgive, but more importantly, you don't react in ways that give them the satisfaction of mattering. They're going to try to convince themselves this isn't a big deal. They're going to minimize what they did, reframe it as harmless curiosity or concern, or just checking in occasionally. They're going to tell themselves you're paranoid, you're overreacting, you're making something out of nothing. But late at night, when they're alone with their thoughts and can't escape the truth, they'll know. They'll know they crossed lines, invaded privacy, exhibited behavior that would horrify anyone who knew about it. They'll know their obsession revealed something deeply broken inside them. They'll know that you knowing is worse than any punishment you could actively inflict, because it means living with the permanent shame of being seen for exactly what they are. But let's go deeper, because we need to talk about why this dynamic happened in the first place. Why did they choose you out of everyone they could have fixated on? Why did they invest all that time and energy into monitoring your life? The answer is simple and devastating for them. You represented everything they're not. You represented the life they wish they had the courage to live. You represented the authenticity they traded for approval. You represented the freedom they sacrificed for safety. You represented the power they gave away to fit in. They saw in you what they killed in themselves, and instead of doing the hard work to resurrect it, they just watched you live it. That's the real tragedy of stalkers, of obsessive watchers, of people who can't look away from someone else's existence. They're not fascinated by you because you're perfect or untouchable or special in some unrealistic way. They're fascinated because you're real in a way they've forgotten how to be. They're fascinated because you take up space without apologizing, because you make choices without endless deliberation, because you exist as yourself instead of as a carefully curated performance designed to please everyone. And that authenticity, that realness, that unapologetic existence, it's magnetic to people who've spent their whole lives being whatever everyone else needed them to be. So they watched, thinking that somehow observation would teach them the secret. They analyzed your patterns, thinking there was a formula they could copy. They studied your life, thinking there was a trick, a method, a system they could implement to become more like you. But they missed the entire point. The secret is there is no secret. The formula is there is no formula. The trick is that it's not a trick at all. You're just being yourself. And that's something they can't learn by watching, because it requires doing the internal work they've been avoiding their entire life. It requires confronting their own emptiness, their own compromises, their own cowardice. It requires becoming someone instead of studying someone. And that's work they'll never do, because it's easier to watch than to change. Now they're stuck in this horrible realization. They wasted months, maybe years, maybe longer, investing in understanding someone who was never going to give them what they wanted. They built their routine around checking on you, their emotional state around what you were doing, their sense of purpose around tracking your life, and all of it was pointless. All of it was meaningless. All of it was just them running from themselves by hiding in your shadow. And now that shadow has teeth. Now that shadow sees them clearly. Now that shadow is deciding whether they're even worth the effort of acknowledgement, or if they should just be left to rot in their own self-made hell of obsession and shame. Let's talk about what real power looks like, because they confuse surveillance with power, and that's why they're losing. Real power isn't knowing things about people they didn't tell you. Real power isn't tracking someone's digital footprint like a detective working a case. Real power isn't having information you can lord over someone or use to manipulate them or hold as leverage for some future confrontation. That's not power. That's pathology. That's control issues wearing a detective costume. That's weakness pretending to be strength. Real power is being so solid in yourself, so complete in your own existence, that you don't need to invade anyone else's privacy to feel significant. Real power is what you have right now. Knowing they were watching, letting them watch, using their obsession against them by feeding them exactly what you wanted them to see, while keeping your real life, your real thoughts, your real plans completely hidden from their surveillance. Real power is controlling the narrative they think they're documenting. Real power is being the writer, director, and lead actor in a show they thought they were just watching, when really they were part of the plot all along. Real power is turning their greatest perceived advantage, their secret observation, into their greatest vulnerability, their exposed obsession. You didn't just beat them at their own game. You were playing a different game entirely while they thought they understood the rules. And here's what they'll never understand. What they can't understand. What their psychology won't allow them to comprehend. You don't need to watch people to understand them. You don't need to stalk profiles to know who's real and who's fake. You don't need to track every move to predict what someone's going to do. When you're actually intelligent, when you're actually observant, when you're actually conscious, you see people completely in single interactions. You understand their patterns from brief exchanges. You know who they are from how they make you feel, not from what you can find out about them through investigation. That's the difference between consciousness and obsession. One sees truth directly. The other chases information, hoping it will reveal truth. One operates from clarity. The other operates from fear. They operated from fear the entire time. Fear that they weren't enough. Fear that you were better than them. Fear that if they didn't keep tabs on you, they'd lose some imaginary connection or control or relevance they never actually had. Fear that your life would become so much bigger than theirs that the comparison would destroy them. Newsflash, it already is bigger, and the comparison is already destroying them, and their surveillance didn't prevent any of it. It just gave them a front row seat to their own inadequacy. They paid the price of their peace, their dignity, their self-respect, just to confirm what they already knew deep down. They're not you. They'll never be you. And watching won't change that. So what do you do now? What's the move when you've been vindicated? When you've been proven right about being watched? When you've got all the evidence and power and moral high ground? You do what you've always done. You keep building. You keep growing. You keep becoming more. You keep living so loudly, so fully, so unapologetically that their little surveillance operation becomes irrelevant, background noise in the symphony of your existence. You don't slow down to accommodate their obsession. You don't dim your light to make their darkness feel less stark. You don't shrink yourself to protect them from the comparison. You expand. You rise. You become so much bigger than their tiny scope of observation that they can't even see all of you anymore.
They wanted war, expected fire, rage, a storm they could dance in. But nah, you gave them silence, and oh how it burned. They pushed, prodded, waiting for the explosion, but you just stood there, unmoved, untouched, unbothered. And that was the moment their game fell apart. Because what's a puppet master with no strings to pull? Just another fool desperate for control. They thought they had you figured out, thought they knew exactly what buttons to press, but when you didn't react, oh, their own mind turned against them. The silence started crawling under their skin, a whisper that never faded, a weight they couldn't shake. Every word they ever spat at you, now bouncing back inside their own head, growing louder, sharper, heavier, and suddenly the one who set the fire is the one getting burned. You see, silence ain't surrender. It's a slow, creeping nightmare. They begged for a response, but got emptiness. A void so deep it swallowed their arrogance whole. They needed you to argue, needed proof they still mattered. But you made them disappear. No words, no anger, just a cold, distant nothing. And nothing? Oh, nothing is the loudest sound in the world. They lost, and they don't even know how. One minute they're in control, the next, they're drowning in their own doubts. You didn't break, didn't beg, didn't even flinch. You just walked away. And in that moment, they felt it. The shift, the collapse, the end. Not yours, theirs. Because the battle was never between you and them. It was them against their own reflection, and they lost. Now they sit in their own mess. Their own mind is the battlefield. And there's no enemy left to fight, no one left to blame. They check their phone, re-release old messages, wonder if maybe, just maybe, you'll give them one last reaction, one last sign that they still exist in your world. But you're gone. You've moved on. You've already won. And that's the storm they never heard coming. Silent, deadly, absolute. Every move was planned, every word, every insult, placed carefully like pieces on a chessboard. They thought they were in control. Thought they could push you, poke at your weaknesses, make you crack. But something strange happened. You didn't break, you didn't explode. You just stood there, unreadable, untouchable, and suddenly their game wasn't fun anymore. They needed a reaction, something, anything to prove they still had power over you, but you gave them nothing. No anger, no tears, just silence. Stretching out like a shadow, swallowing their every attempt. And that silence, it wasn't weakness. It was a noose tightening around their ego, their pride, their entire illusion of control. They built a trap, expecting you to fall, but instead, they walked straight into it themselves. The moment you refused to fight, the walls of their own deception closed in. They stood there, hands outstretched, waiting for you to strike. But the only thing hitting them? Their own reflection, the weight of their own emptiness. Toxic people don't survive without a host. They feed on energy, on attention, on pain. But when you cut off their supply, oh, that's when the real panic sets in. They fumble, they spiral, they drown in their own chaos. Because without you to react, without you to fuel their sick little game, they are nothing. Their words, once like daggers, now fall dull against the floor. Their tricks, once so clever, now look pathetic. And the worst part? They know it. They can feel the power slipping, the control fading. They glance at you, waiting, hoping for something to hold on to, but you just watch. Calm, silent, a storm with no rain, a fire with no smoke. And that is what breaks them. Because when they can't shake you, can't rattle you, can't even make you flinch, they start to crack instead. The same poison they tried to pour into you is now running through their own veins. And the silence, the eerie, suffocating quiet, it turns into a mirror they can't escape, a mirror they never wanted to look into. They thought they could control the game, thought they could set the stage, play the role, pull the strings. But they never expected this, never thought their own trap would close around them. And yet here they are, caught, exposed, powerless. They stare at you, searching for something, some sign that they still matter, some proof that they still hold space in your mind. But all they find is emptiness. And that emptiness, it is deafening, it is final, it is their greatest nightmare come to life. They laughed at first, smirked, scoffed, shrugged it off, thought your silence meant nothing, thought they had won. But nah, that silence, it started stretching, started creeping in, wrapping around them like a heavy fog, and before they knew it, that silence wasn't empty anymore. It was screaming, and the only voice they could hear, their own. Every insult they threw at you, now echoing inside their own head. Every lie, every manipulation, every twisted little game, haunting them in the quiet. They wanted noise, chaos, a fight, something to keep them from facing what they had done. But all they got was the eerie, suffocating quiet. And in that quiet, their demons woke up. They don't know what you're thinking, don't know if you're plotting, if you're watching, if you're waiting. And that terrifies them. They check their phone, again and again, hoping for a sign, a reaction, a crack in the silence. But there's nothing. Just the same crushing stillness, the same unbearable void. Paranoia starts eating them alive. Every shadow looks like payback. Every whisper sounds like your name. The guilt, the shame, the fear. Things they thought they buried now crawling out of their own skin. They see your face in their mind, see the moment they went too far, see the consequences catching up, and there's no running now. Your absence isn't peace, it's punishment. No words, no closure, just the slow, creeping realization that they played themselves. The more they try to forget, the louder it gets. Every thought twisting, turning, sinking its claws into their mind. They built their world on deception, and now that world is crumbling from the inside out. They thought they broke you, thought they left you shattered, but the only thing breaking is them. The walls are closing in, the ghosts are whispering, and the worst part? They have no one to blame but themselves. No distractions, no excuses, just the weight of their own reflection staring back at them, asking the one question they can't escape. What have you done? They wanted a fight, a war of words, a battle of egos, a clash that would let them twist the story in their favor, but nah. You gave them nothing. No anger, no defense, just silence. And that wasn't surrender, that was the final verdict. No arguments, no appeals, just judgment. Words can be twisted, debated, denied, but silence is final. It lingers. It suffocates. It doesn't give them the satisfaction of a comeback, the relief of an explanation. It leaves them alone with the truth they tried to run from. And the truth is a cruel, merciless judge. They spent so much time trying to control the story, to paint themselves as the winner, but now, they're trapped inside their own mind, replaying every moment, every mistake, wondering, doubting, questioning if they ever had power at all. The answer comes in that unbearable quiet. They never did. Your silence was the sentence they never saw coming. It wasn't just rejection, it was exile. A lifetime of what-ifs. A never-ending loop of regret. Because without your reaction, without your energy, their power vanished like smoke. And now they sit in the ruins of their own arrogance, choking on the silence they used to ignore. They used to think they were untouchable, that they could say, do, destroy anything without consequence. But when you walked away, everything changed. The battlefield they built, now empty. The game they played, now meaningless. The power they thought they had, revealed for the illusion it always was. They stare into the void, searching for something, anything to prove they still matter. But the only thing staring back is their own reflection. And in that reflection, they see it. The truth they've been running from. The power shift they never expected. The brutal, undeniable reality that they lost the moment you stopped playing. Because silence isn't weakness, it's judgment. And when you refuse to fight, when you refuse to give them even a single word, you became the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And they became nothing. They pushed, pulled, played every mind game they knew, just waiting for you to break, to react, to give them something they could feed off. But nah, you didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. And that's when it hit them. They had no power left. Before, they controlled the strings, knew exactly how to make you doubt yourself, how to twist your emotions, how to keep you tangled in their chaos. But now, the strings are cut. Their tricks don't work. Their words fall flat. And the worst part? You don't even care. That's the part that keeps them up at night. Not the silence, not the distance, but the realization that you're not even looking back. They spent so long thinking they were the center of your world, only to realize they were nothing more than a fading shadow in yours. They test the waters, send out bait, hoping for even the smallest reaction, but every time you ignore them, every time you keep moving like they never existed, it burns. That's the sting they can't shake. The frustration that twists inside them. The weight of knowing they no longer matter. A manipulator without control is like a fire without oxygen. They suffocate. Their whole identity is built on owning the game, but the moment you stepped off the board, they lost. And now they sit there, choking on their own insignificance, grasping for a power that no longer exists. They wanted to be your puppet master. Now, they're the ones unraveling. Desperation sets in, the panic of watching you slip away, knowing they can't pull you back. They realize the battle isn't yours anymore. It's theirs, and it's against something they can't fight. Irrelevance. Because the moment you stopped reacting, the moment you stopped feeding their control, the moment you chose yourself over their games, that was the moment their power died. And nothing is more terrifying to them than knowing they're powerless. The echoes of what they did never leave them. Every quiet moment is haunted by the weight of what they lost. No distractions, no excuses, just the cold realization that they can't undo the damage. And the worst part? There's no one left to listen. Silence was once their weapon, their way of making you feel small. But now, it's their prison. They reach for the control they once had, but it slips through their fingers like sand. Because the one person they always expected to be there gone, and gone for good. They convinced themselves you were replaceable, that someone else could fill your space, bring the same energy, tolerate the same disrespect. Nah, there's no substitute for what's real. And now they sit in the ruins of their arrogance, realizing they threw away what they'll never find again. The world moves on, but regret holds them hostage. It lingers in the quiet, whispers in the dark, screams when they're alone. They thought indifference would make them stronger, but losing you didn't make them powerful. It made them empty. And that emptiness, it's forever. Some lessons come with a second chance. This one doesn't. They could beg, plead, rewrite history in their mind, but reality doesn't bend for the foolish. What's gone is gone, and nothing, not a single word, can bring back the version of you that once cared. They always thought you'd be there, that no matter what, you'd pick up, you'd answer, you'd entertain their nonsense, but now their words fall into a void, unread, unheard, unanswered, and suddenly they understand what real loss feels like. It's funny how some people only realize your worth when they can no longer reach you, but by then, it's not your problem anymore. Walking away wasn't weakness, it wasn't surrender, it was the deadliest move you could have made, because now they have to watch. Watch as you rise, watch as you build, watch as you become everything they swore you'd never be, and that's the kind of pain they can't escape. They wanted you broken, wanted you stuck in the mess they made, wanted you so focused on getting back at them that you'd never move forward, but no. You did something worse. You left them behind. No fights, no warnings, no last words, just silence and success. You became the storm they never saw coming. Every step you take, every win you stack, every ounce of peace you gain, it burns them alive, because they were counting on your failure. But instead, you thrived. And the best part, you didn't even need to try. Revenge, that would have given them power. It would have kept them relevant, kept them in your head, kept them tied to your energy. But you chose something better. Indifference. No reaction. No effort to hurt them back. Just pure, unstoppable growth. Now they sit in the wreckage of their own making, hoping, praying that somehow, some way you still care. That their name still crosses your mind, that you're still out there, plotting their downfall. But the truth? You forgot about them long before they realized they lost you. That's the real pain. Not karma, not payback. Just knowing that they don't matter anymore. That their presence, their voice, their existence, none of it affects you. You moved on, while they stayed stuck. And that realization, it cuts deeper than any revenge ever could. They wanted to be the villain in your story, the mastermind behind your pain, but instead, they became nothing. Just another chapter you closed, another lesson learned, another mistake you'll never make again. And now, they have to live with that. Forever. No grand speech. No last argument, no dramatic send-off, just silence. And that was the loudest goodbye you could have given, because some endings don't need words, they just need distance. And once you walked away, they felt everything they once ignored. They expected closure, expected you to explain, to justify, to make sense of their mistakes for them. But nah. You left them exactly as they left you, confused, empty, searching for answers that will never come. And that's what haunts them the most. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't weakness. It was power. The choice to not waste another second, another breath, another ounce of your energy on someone who never deserved it, because the truth is you owed them nothing. Not a conversation, not an explanation, nothing. They replay the past over and over, looking for a moment that never existed, the moment they lost you. Was it that last fight? The day they lied? The time they tested your patience one step too far? They'll never know. And that mystery, it will eat them alive. See, they thought they were in control. Thought they could push, pull, manipulate, and you'd always stay within reach. But reality hit them like a slap they never saw coming. Because when you walked, you never looked back. And now, that door is locked forever. Now, the silence speaks for you. Louder than words ever could. It tells them what they never wanted to hear, that they were never as important as they thought, that they never had the power they pretended to hold, and that the one person they took for granted is never coming back. That's the final goodbye, not a message, not a call, not a single wasted syllable, just your absence. And now, every second without you is a reminder they lost the best thing they ever had, and they'll never get a second chance.